Yeah, I'm probably going to be drinking the rest of the glass after this is done. But thank you so much to the fine crew at Flaviar for hosting us for Silicon Gardens Meetup. I think in this season number 4. It's quite a privilege, quite a pleasure. For those of you who've been coming for every single week, welcome back. For those of you who are new here in the house, very, very welcome. We try to do these things as often as possible because it's not just important to be an investment fund that is there to take equity shares to become rich, but it is about spreading the community, making sure that people have the best chance in succeeding, and hopefully with these types of events, we're in a position to be able to be an active part in the community here in Ljubljana, to foster new connections and to make sure that... Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Let me do this so that the mic doesn't go directly into the speaker, and then I think we're gonna be fine. Sorry about that. Testing. Back row, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so if I do this, and this is the distance, then we'll be fine. No. Technical difficulties, everyone get a drink from the bar. No, I'm just kidding. The bar is open, however, we're gonna probably proceed to the happy hour after this talk is completed. Jernej, thank you so very much for taking the time. Should we do it without the microphones? I'm just doing a test. Is this okay?
Turn off.
Yeah, okay, I'm turning it off.
Wait.
Okay. Back row, is it okay?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Say something loud.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for this technical mishap, but this is going to be way more sincere now and easier.
A shouting match, that's good.
Shouting match, definitely. With some drinks, so that it can turn into a bad joke. As I said, bars is going to be open afterwards. For now, Jernej, we have you here. We were talking just before what would be the best way to introduce you, and it's like we were reading the Twitter bio. The LinkedIn is impressive as fuck, which is really wow. Probably a lot of people here already knows the guy, coder, Facebook, Apple, exit, runs a company, done insane good stuff in his life. But probably for me the most interesting bit is introvert turned extrovert, coder turned leader, and somebody who wanted to get, in a position to retire at 35, but then honestly admitting, no, I'm never going to start working because work is fun. I hope that's a sufficient introduction for you. Can I start with a little bit of a cheeky question at the beginning?
Sure, go ahead.
What drives you?
It's like the hardest possible question to ask. No, but I think it's like building something. It's about building stuff. Like most engineers, I feel like have this, desire to build something, and coding is one means to get there, to build something. Right? Like you can build it in multiple ways. You can do all kinds of things in life, and coding is just one. I think like if I say that I started with Legos, like how many engineers started with Legos? Like probably like 50% plus. I don't know of my generation.
Or something else, right?
Right. Well, some building some stuff, right? So I think it's just the desire to build things. Like that sort of. Yeah, I think that's the main drive.
I'll definitely be asking you what was the coolest thing you've ever built, but let's start the beginning at the beginning. One of the first things this gentleman mentions to us when we started discussing for this was, please say that I never finished college, but I'm a software developer and I'm damn good at it. So, could you start with the early beginnings and how it all started for you?
Yeah, sure. So, it all started, I actually started before high school. So compared to my peers, I got my first PC like pretty late. Like I think it was like 8th grade of primary school. And like I started playing games for about a week. And I was like, this is cool and all, but like how the hell does this thing work? I started doing stuff, internet, looking how things work, whatever. Building websites, like most people I feel like started building websites, HTML and all that. And eventually that turned into iOS development. I mean, the iPhone came out in 2007. I think I was like third year of high school. I don't know. These things get fuzzy once you reach a certain age. Yeah, I got into iOS development. Actually, I watched like a bunch of courses online that came out of Stanford. It was the first year where they did this sort of like public education thing before all these fancy platforms.
And you were still in high school back then?
I was still in high school. So yeah, I got into it, started building apps. I built one that some of you might know, Kinosporedi. It was pretty popular at some point in the Slovenian app store. Yeah, that was it. Finished high school, built random apps.
Were you one of those people who still remember seeing that first iPhone 1 presentation back live?
Yeah, I mean, I think by that point I was sort of an Apple fanboy already. I had a MacBook. I use all my Zorisova stipendia for that. I bought it in Austria, I remember, because you couldn't get it here. And yeah, of course I followed everything Apple.
And then you just basically self-learned and said, okay, I'm going to put something on the App Store.
I mean, it was like, oh, iPhone, cool. What does this run? How does this run? Like, just looking into it. And then obviously like, oh, well, there's an SDK now, so let me actually poke holes at it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that basically, one thing led to another, and then at some point you were able to hustle your way into an Apple internship. How did that happen?
So, I mean, Kinosporedi honestly probably has a big part in this, because so as I was building Kinosporedi, I was learning how to code for iOS, watch the Stanford class. There's a bunch of guest lecturers from Apple, a bunch of engineering managers and whatnot. I followed all of them on Twitter. Twitter is an interesting topic these days, but I followed all of them on Twitter, and like after the first year of university, one of these managers posted like, hey, my team is looking for interns. And I was like, I'm interested. And long story short, within 3 days, I was done with an interview, and I had an offer. It was funny those days. I speak like it's been like 50 years ago, no, but like, you wouldn't believe it, I got mail, FedEx, like an envelope this thick with an actual like, printed offer. Yeah.
How old were you back then?
Oh, wait, what, 20?
Nice.
21. Well,
and
20.
the offer was for an internship in Palo Alto?
Cupertino, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing was kind of weird because it happened in about 3 days. Like, all of a sudden, me from my childhood bedroom just doing, obscure stuff.
Did you tell your mom this was going to happen? Or was she
No.
surprised?
Like, I just literally, because it happened over 3 days and I was like, this is definitely not happening.
Okay.
And then I said like, oh yeah, I have this interview with Apple. They were like, what? Then I was like, yeah, don't worry about it.
Thanks God for the paper FedEx offer.
Yes, because I mean, for them that was a huge thing. It was like a tangible thing. It came from Apple Inc. One infinite loop. It was crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, it happened so fast. It took me a while to process.
How was working for Apple? How did it look like?
I mean, obviously it was interesting, fascinating, all those things. I ended up working in a really cool team at that time. It was iAds, if anyone remembers. And at that point, that was a super high priority project. And believe it or not, I got a chance to present in front of Steve Jobs at one point. And that was intense. But thankfully I had like good managers, good directors, whatever. So it was all like very orchestrated and no drama. But it was super high priority, so I got to see a lot of cool stuff. I saw the iPad before it came out, but it was it's hilarious. It was bolted to a table, so you couldn't see the shape of it or anything. Just one screen, like tap on it. In a room with no windows. It's true.
I think we need to hear more about the Steve Jobs interaction. Sorry for the tangent in this one.
Sure, I mean, it wasn't much of an interaction. It was literally like, come in a room, there's like a bunch of directors, whatever. I got to like say like 3 words.
Okay.
Did
he wear shoes?
I think at that point I was so like anxious. Like I don't even remember where exactly it was, which room. So there's a bunch of people and me sitting there like, full little intern.
Back to the topic at hand. Obviously the internship went well because you got an offer to return.
Yes.
How did that look like? And I mean, was at that point already clear in your head, I found my calling, this is what I'm gonna do?
I think it was clear before that.
Nice.
Like in the sense that like I wanted to write code, I wanted to be an engineer, work on cool stuff, build things, and so yeah, I don't think that was a major sort of career shift, but it was a major career accelerator.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that was. In return offer, yes, I mean I did well at the internship. You know, there's a bunch of extremely smart people, and I think somebody asked a question about imposter syndrome. Well, I had it back then. I still have it. That never goes away. You just learn how to deal with it. And you know, there's people from like Stanford, Harvard, whatever, and then me. Like it was so.
I mean, looking at you right now, you seem insanely confident. At some, I mean, also confident in your technical skills.
Well, yeah, I'm quite confident in my technical
So-
skills.
Did that happen during the time at Apple, before, later? When did you figure out I'm good at this?
I think it was like Facebook times.
Okay.
That was sort of the
So,
confirmation.
a bit later.
Yeah, a bit later.
Okay.
Well, actually, quite a few years later, where I was like,
Okay.
there's probably something, you know.
So the internship was for a few months. What happened next?
Yeah, like I said, I did well. Worked on the iAd producer thing, which was a thing where you could like visually make these iAds, which were HTML5 based. At that time, HTML5 was this big new shiny thing. Yeah, so they're like, oh, you did well. We give return offers to people that do really well. Here's a return offer. The thing with that return offer was that it was a return offer for another internship, and it sort of means that you have to keep going to school. And I was like, I kind of don't want to. I was like, whatever, I'll decide. Come back home, back to Slovenia, and you know, go back to school. No big plans, whatever. It's like, we'll see what happens. And then an opportunity came to join a startup, and I actually didn't think too much about that. I was just jumped straight into it, and stopped the whole school thing, and didn't worry about the Apple offer thing.
And you joined relatively early on, so you get to do the coding stuff. You were
Yeah,
happy
yeah.
about it.
Yeah. It was very fulfilling because I got to build, you know, a mobile advertising SDK from scratch, sort of relevant to my internship as well. So that was cool. You did something from nothing.
What was the product of that?
Well, it was supposed to be a mobile advertising platform, the whole thing, like an SDK, a bidding system, and all that. Eventually, after a few years, it didn't go too well. But for me, at that point, I was more interested in the whole coding thing in any way, so I was very like focused on that.
And obviously, you were doing a bunch of stuff on the side. What made you decide I want to join something else instead of, you know, it's so common nowadays. I have this idea. I want to do my idea. I want to pursue my startup.
When my time at that startup was done, I was in roughly 2014. You know, I moved to the US for this startup as well. So lived in Palo Alto for 2 years, I think. And at that point, I had to come back to Slovenia, visas, all that stuff. US immigration is, you know, crazy. And at that point, I was like, what do I do now, right? Should I start something, whatever? I actually met a couple people there when I was in the US. I spoke to them, hey, what do you think? I should start this, that. I had a couple ideas, but everybody was like, but that's, you know, crap, or that's whatever. You know, don't do that. And then I was like, you know, I probably don't know enough to be a successful founder. Let me just go and try and join a big company to learn stuff. Like, let me learn how things are done properly. You know, as an engineer, especially at that time, you got like a million recruiter emails anyway, almost no matter what you were doing. So I just replied to a Facebook one, because during my time there, I was, you know, I worked at Apple, sort of, you know, internship at Apple, met people from Google, from all these companies. And out of the big companies, Facebook seemed like the most appropriate one, sort of as like a big startup. You know, Facebook is famous, just ship fast, like iterate, you know, if stuff breaks, don't worry about it. You know, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, this sounds pretty good. So I replied to that email, got an interview. Again, visa issue, so they're like, maybe you should join the London office, but we're not sure. Let's do the interview first. Did the interview, successful. They're like, cool, you can go to London, and then you transfer to California. That's exactly what I did. I spent 18 months in London, and then 2016, I transferred back to California.
Seems like a plan that you executed brilliantly.
I mean, plan, sort of, I guess, but like it was constrained by immigration.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, sure.
I have a sense that, I don't know, maybe I'm the same generation. We're all like idolizing the Silicon Valley vibe and the community there. Was it like that for you as well? That you basically just wanted to be there specifically?
Oh yeah. I think like even before like I really got like super into coding, and in the beginning of high school I was like, oh, I want to study at Stanford. Right. And obviously quickly fell apart because you realize how freaking smart people that go there are, or have a ton of money.
Yeah.
It's usually around 50-50.
Yeah.
I wasn't in either category, so it was a no. Well, yeah, at that point. So yeah, studying didn't happen. So the second best thing was like tech startup, something.
And then coming into the community back there, because probably those were the golden days where the hype was real, the connections were happening. How was it on the inside?
You mean just in Silicon Valley in general? Honestly, when I was at the startup, yes, like we went to some events, you know, we go to like investor events, random things, whatever, but not too much. At that point, I was still very much just into coding. And then when I joined Facebook, I was just focused on Facebook, just getting as much as I can out of Facebook. So in all honesty, I wasn't networking or doing these events, meetups that much. I mean, sure, I went to some like, you know, conferences, developer conferences, whatever. I met some interesting people, like randomly, but I wasn't super active in that. I was like, oh, Facebook career, focus.
Okay, so why specifically Facebook? Again, I mean, there was probably an era where this was like the coolest company, the hottest company. Now, obviously, we have sort of a different mentality towards it, but as an engineer, what specifically was the thing that convinced you, I need to get there and hire into that company specifically?
I mean, I think for engineers, especially at that point in time, especially engineers with maybe a slight like startup mindset, like build things fast, experiment, do things like that. I think Facebook was probably the best big company. Still under super high growth, that was interesting as well. When I joined it was 8,000 people, now it's like 80, well, minus 11,000 now. But so I've seen it through hyper growth. So that to me was interesting, the engineering aspect, but like the move fast, ship stuff, experiment, and all these things. Google was for like the PhDs. You know, this is obviously like an over generalization, but that's roughly what it was.
Okay. Do you think you have gotten out of Facebook what you expected to get, in terms of experience, in terms of growth?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Are there any specific learning points that you would say that now really stick out and come to mind?
Yes, that was the transition from an engineer into management.
Okay.
Facebook.
Can you talk more deeply into this?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, the transition was sort of from a product engineer working on UIs and newsfeed and whatever into more infrastructure. So what's under the newsfeed, what makes it, you know, scroll fast. You know, Facebook had problems at that point with that. And sort of into becoming kind of a domain expert for a small part of that. And then the tech lead for that, which means you gain some influence with some engineers, you mentor some people. And then the transition into engineering management was sort of like natural because it was just one step above that. And I jumped at the first opportunity, not because I was like always aspiring to be a manager. In all honesty, you know, it's in some ways it's a terrible job, but and it's much better to write code and deal with people. And so, but it was an amazing experience because Facebook being at that point, you know, relatively big company, at that point it was like, what, 32,000 people, something like that. They have programs in place where they teach you how to be a manager, very effectively so. And that was amazing. You know, we had like amazing speakers. If you all know the book Radical Candor by Kim Scott, well, she was one of the lecturers for my manager education session, something. So yeah, like it was the best. Well, I saw it as the best possible opportunity to transition into management, because like you actually learn from professionals, from experts. You don't wing it.
For those of us who didn't have that experience, can you take us through a typical day of a really good engineer at Facebook? How does it, are there like stand-up meetings? How does it actually, all form together?
That's a good question, because kind of like in a lot of, well, I guess there's no good comparisons, but Facebook operated, so each team operated sort of standalone, and it was up to the team to figure it out. So there's no regular mandated stand-ups. Like if a team wanted stand-ups, sure, they did them. But if they didn't, they could also do it some other way. The only thing that was sort of common was this Facebook-wide task manager, which also like finance used or legal used. All the tasks were in there. And that was actually pretty amazing. I mean, the UX was obviously terrible, but the concept always was great. I mean, internal tools, that's a whole other topic. But that concept was amazing. So like everyone was sort of figuring out their own thing, or like the team, or maybe the org, figured out what works best for them.
Attempt number 2.
Okay, let's try.
Again, I'm gonna ask a goofy question. Something good, something bad, and something funny about the years in Facebook, from your personal perspective.
Well, I want to start with the good. So, since I just kind of spoke about it, was all this like support systems that you have. Like, as a manager, I had assigned mentors that were like, 15-year like experience, like engineering leaders. So yeah, I say this was definitely like a good highlight. Was just how amazing the support systems are to like get you to learn things properly. The bad. What was it? That thing?
Something good, something bad, and something funny.
Oh man, you put me on the spot. I only remember the good stuff,
Okay. Weirdest thing from a technical coding perspective that you've seen in a big company like Facebook? I mean, in Facebook.
Sound effects. Yeah. So I think the weirdest thing. I guess the most surprising thing.
Yeah.
The most surprising thing is just how much money a company like Facebook loses if you like screw something up by like 3 milliseconds, which seems like nothing, and it's like just the millionth sticker just starts going,
Okay.
and it's insane. And then it's like, bug fix of the week. Oh, this guy just sold us $78 million. Great.
Can you give us a practical example of that? Because now we're all curious.
So somebody screwed up the Facebook app, especially in those days, like when you started it up, it was kind of slow. It showed you that screen for a while, the blue icon thing, whatever. So that was the time when Facebook would fetch from the server every single time you opened the app, all the different experiment flags, because everybody's app looked different. And there was like, I think, 10,000 plus of them at some point. So they had to be fetched synchronously when you opened the app, because obviously, if you did asynchronously, a bunch of problems and weird experiences. So somebody screwed something up, and the thing was 3 milliseconds slower, and it was literally the number was like in the tens of millions of dollars lost in like 3 days.
And that's just the scale and everything.
Yeah. The scale was just brutal. It's insane. It was the biggest iOS app on the planet.
Did you fire the guy?
No. The guy fixed it and got a fix of the week thing.
Nice. Nice.
You screw it up, you fix it,
Okay.
and you're famous for it.
Trying to be just a tad bit more serious here. One thing that stands out from your resume, like every 6 months or so you get hired. I mean, you get promoted. In Facebook, your basically growth was quite impressive. What gives? How did that happen?
I guess at some point I got good with political games. So, office politics. You figure out who you need to talk to and how. And just kidding. But, I mean, I think also when we spoke about engineering confidence, I think that's the time when I gained it, because I also realized, oh, I'm relatively good in the thing, compared to the Stanford guy, to the Harvard guy, or whatever. And especially the initial couple promotions, it was purely for just technical expertise, knowledge, whatever. Later, as you progress, and it's actually like a general learning what separates a very senior engineer versus just a senior engineer. I don't know, there's a line somewhere where just being good technically is not enough. And you have to do other things, like you need to become good with people, basically. Being it, management, being it people that you mentor, you have to mentor people, it's one of the things. There's some specializations, like I'm sure if you have a PhD in some specific thing and you end up working on Oculus because you know how LCDs work or whatever, that's very specific. But even at that point, you're gonna struggle reaching a certain level if you're not good with people, or politics, in quotes, right? Like office politics.
I mean, just being a nice person, not being an idiot, communicating well, stuff like that.
Yeah, communication. Over-communicate everything all the time. That's
What makes a good code, do you think? Sorry for putting you on the spot. Or what attributes or characteristics are necessary for somebody to be what you would consider good?
You have to be curious. You cannot just be like, oh, school taught me this, I'm in this platform, I'm doing this thing, sure I'm up to date with the latest technologies, whatever. That's sort of not enough. You have to be really curious. For me, coding is a hobby and a career. That helped. But you really need to dedicate time to figuring things out, on top of just your day-to-day things.
And then what would you say really brings out the best out of the best? I mean, you said curious coders. There's probably a bunch of them here in this room, but there's only X amount of the Steve Jobs in the world, of the Mark Zuckerbergs in the world, and so on and so forth.
Sorry, well, interviewing engineers at Facebook, sure, but also running a program to teach other Facebook engineers how to interview properly. So, and this is how I met my future co-founder, because he joined the effort, we're teaching others, mentoring others. And he also worked in infrastructure, so that was another cool thing. And then I started, explaining to him this idea that I have. I was like, hey, what do you think? He took about 3 months for me to convince him, but I knew he's the right person because he's extremely smart.
How do you convince somebody who has, a fantastic salary, a fantastic company he works for, to join something new, something unknown?
I mean, I came up with sort of a limited scope, so that he doesn't think we're going to be doing this startup and then we're going to be building it on scraps for 8 years and eating, ramen, just the dry ramen thing, pot noodles, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, look, we're going to do this. We're going to raise a bunch of money because we want to hire the best engineers when we're going to be starting. And we're going to give ourselves a time frame. Let's say 2 years, maybe 3, but let's say 2 years. If we don't have a rocket ship in 2 years, at least we have an amazing team that we would have built that we can sort of sell or something, right? So that was plan B. And I started explaining this to him. He was like,
The underlying premise is we're going to raise a shitload of money and have an amazing team.
Yes.
It's quite a confident proposition at that point.
Like I said, politics.
Okay, so that either means you're extremely persuasive, or you were just absolutely sure that you can pull this one off.
No, I had no idea we can pull this off.
Okay,
I was like, man, I told him in the end, I was like, look, that's the idea. Now the reality, we'll see. But here's the other thing. Facebook actually, at that point, if you quit Facebook, you could come back within a year without re-interviewing at the exact same position, at the exact same salary, and your stock would resume vesting. So it was literally you could take a year unpaid vacation and return.
As a side note, did many people actually decide to come back?
Yeah, a lot of people. They're like, oh, I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna explore things and do stuff, and then 4 months later they're back.
Cool idea, actually. Okay, so basically now you have the idea, and that's another question that we got on Slack, very, very often here. Here's this dude who basically had just an idea, no specific pitch deck, no specific revenue, no traction, and then just 3 million bam investment. I don't even have to pose the question, Paul.
No, just kidding. No, I think, so here's the thing, the reality is, and you know, some investors in this room might sort of cringe or whatever, but they all have a checklist. And it's sort of based on risk, right? A founder comes to them and has this great idea, but maybe one, he's not technical enough, doesn't have a background, straight out of college, hasn't demonstrated, you know, certain things in his past, whatever. So pretty high risk. But then somebody comes in this sea of all bunch of others, entrepreneurs trying to pitch their ideas, and has been at Facebook for 4 years. The idea is related directly to the work they've been doing at Facebook, and they've been pretty successful at Facebook.
So what you're saying is you had proven track record
Yes.
for you guys before, and really rock solid domain expertise.
Yeah, sure. So we might, you know, so we didn't have a team. We didn't have code. Well, sort of code that was property of that startup, but we have written all of these things already within Facebook in the past 4 years. That's a pretty great track record. So it's almost like, I don't know, I mean, second-time founder in some way, because it's like, well, you've done this at Facebook. Sure, it wasn't a separate startup, but you've done it successfully. And all these investors, they just pick up the phone and call all of these directors and VPs and whatever. It's just standard practice in Silicon Valley. They just ask them about it. And I mean, 4 out of our 7 investors were Facebook people, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that. You alluded to before, some of the people who actually invested in your company were actually your former managers.
The first thing that happened when I went to which was at that point the VP of this like infrastructure org, I think he managed like 300 people at that point. I was like, look, I'm quitting. The person was like, oh, but why, right? Like, you know, you should stay, you're gonna get promoted, whatever. I was like, I'm doing a startup, and you know, like I want to do this, I want to do that. Like I told him the idea straight up. I was like, look, this is what I'm doing. He was like, okay, well, let me think, right? Like, and he was like, okay, cool, you know, like, sure, like I want, you know, go do your thing, but actually let me get back to you, I have some thoughts. So he comes back to me like 2 days later, and he's like, look, I called up my friend, ex-Facebook VP of operations, and she's a partner at Bain Capital now. Go talk to her, right? And that's how it all began, and then it just sort of spreads. You know, so how people say there's a PayPal mafia? Well, there's a huge Facebook mafia.
Okay. Just, here's the question. Does this, what you're explaining now, happen often? Or were you just that good of a hustler to make it work? Or was it both?
It's probably a little bit of both, but it's not that uncommon. Like, you know, people that are at these big companies and leave, they have a lot of successful startups. So it is some sort of proven recipe in some way, so investors sort of like it.
No, but I mean, does it often happen that managers at Facebook, when people leave, you know, give them money to do their thing and bet on them, essentially?
I mean, often. I don't know what the definition of that is, but it does happen.
Nice.
It does happen. It's not like a one-off.
Okay. So then, essentially, you're in a position, I have funding available, I have a good team that I've assembled. What did you do? What was that initial product that you were building? What was the company?
I mean, like I said, profiling for iOS and Android apps, right? So we're like, this doesn't exist. Let's build a platform. Let's build a little dashboard. It's going to show you a nice little visualization of how your code runs on the CPU. The unique thing was this is actually all production code. So while a user from the App Store uses your thing, it does this stuff. It's not just you plugging in your phone through USB and computer and doing stuff, which was already possible. So that's something we started building. I pretty much removed myself from the engineering and coding part immediately, because one, my co-founder is crazy smart and way better coder than me, like way better. And so I was like, you know what, you just do your thing. I'm gonna worry about hiring, finances, all this, setting everything up. So the first thing we did was, we didn't write any code for 3 months. We literally just went all in on hiring. Because you cannot just hire a mobile profiling expert from like LinkedIn. You really need to like go and explore the network and get to know about these people.
and hiring them from companies where they're making like 500K a year. So like, you know, you need a lot of money to pay them. Obviously not paying them 500K a year, obviously not. But like you need to support the lifestyle that they're used to, at least like, so they break even, and that's a lot of money. We had a small team, and we still run out of money in like, well, we're about to run out of money in like less than 3 years. And it was $3.5 million with 7 people.
So that was like, what, 4 or 5 years ago, something like that? Ish.
Ish, yeah.
Ish, yeah. So the question here is, after all of this, going to the internship and Facebook, the big company experience, you finally made it. Like becoming, you know, a founder of your own startup thing. Was that mission accomplished for you, or did you feel any, like, okay, finally I'm doing what I ultimately dreamed of when I was high school?
No, my goal was retire by 35. I said this to myself when I was 15. No,
okay.
Just kidding. I mean, I did say that, still on track.
Did you tell that to the investors?
No, hell no. No. That's just,
okay.
I'm just sharing this with this intimate group here. So.
Yeah, okay. No, but on a serious note, you now become in a position where you're now managing your own team. How is that different from the development, engineering in Facebook and in a big company like before?
In a lot of ways it's similar, minus all the bureaucracy around it. You know, it's
in
like
a better way or in a worse way? There's less
arguable.
Yeah, okay.
Arguable.
Oh, okay.
But no, I mean, we built a great team, amazing folks. They made their own decisions on a lot of stuff. We converged for like the rest of things, direction, whatever, and just everybody just ran with it. So from that perspective, it was great because we didn't have to like really babysit anyone. They knew what they're responsible for. They know they're gonna answer for it as well. I mean, we did fire a few people, and yeah, and it was, so from that perspective, it was sort of like easy. The hard part is all the rest of the stuff. It's not writing code and developing a product. It's like running a company and like getting product market fit and like making sure people like what you're building and trying to get customers. All of that is just.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about that. How did you actually start in sales? Becoming a salesperson, convincing people to actually give you money, getting clients?
So we had 0 paid customers when we sold the company. So how did we get that far? We had a few customers that were sort of like testing what we were building. I mean, one thing is that the product we picked was extremely hard to build. You need a lot of technical expertise. In 2 years, you cannot build it. You can build a very shitty prototype. And so we had a bunch of companies testing it, playing with it, giving us feedback, and we continuously worked on that, right? But it was not at the point where we could go to like, you know, like Notion was one of our customers. We could not go to Notion and be like, now you're gonna pay us 100K a year. Right, so that was the point where still in the future.
Did you start running out of money back then, or what happened?
We still had a good like 10 months of runway, I think, when we got acquired. But it was, by the time we got acquired, it was a decision between getting acquired, or selling the company, or like raising a Series A, which would have not been possible because no paying customers, but more like a bridge round. And we already had our existing investors committed to that, so there wouldn't be a problem. But then we come back to what I said earlier, which was, I said to my co-founder, look, like we're not gonna like string this along for like 5 years. Like, you know, what do you think? Can we sell this thing in like another 12 months? I mean, sell the product in like 12 months or whatever? And we're like, mobile is hard. Mobile is hard. I'm never doing anything mobile again. It's like the shittiest customer base. And everything is controlled by Apple and Google, so different discussion.
Q&A round is going to be
Yes.
awesome. Yeah.
So anyway, right? So that was, realized that's really hard, whatever. And we were like, you know, unless we pivot, we do something else, some other platform, maybe whatever. Probably not. We already have an idea to pivot to profiling like backends and whatever, but that's a whole other story. But we're like, you know what? Sentry is an amazing company. They gave us all their financial projections, cash, like all that stuff, and I was like, oh my god, this looks amazing. So like, this is probably like the best opportunity at this point.
Can you share the story of how you actually got acquired? Because I heard the rumors, but this was also kind of funny or very much within your style.
It was kind of random. So my co-founder, Indraji, he had a common friend with David Kramer, who's the founder of Sentry. And his common friend was like, well, you two should talk because you're sort of in, you know, the same space, developer, tools, infrastructure, whatever. And like, they get on call, and 5 minutes in, Kramer being the direct person he is, 5 minutes in, he's like, whatever, I'm not gonna like bullshit you here, like, we just wanna acquire you. And Indraji was sort of like, whoa, what? So anyway, after that, we discussed it.
What was your direct instinct response back then?
I was like, well, I didn't expect it, so I didn't have like a direct instinct response. It was sort of like, well, let's, I don't know, get dinner and talk about it.
Nice.
It was very like, sort of, whoa. I mean, after like a couple of days in Crystal, I was like, maybe it's not a bad thing.
Okay.
Well, I mean, depending on the terms, but it might not be a bad thing. Developer tools, you know, it's a fit. Even on like product, it's not just a acqui-hire.
Nice. So the dinner happens. What's next?
I mean, it took us about 3 months and a couple more calls with Sentry to figure out, you know, like again, like I said, you know, I wanted to know about their financials, wanted to know some rough terms around the acquisition, things like that. I did some background checks as well, like just talk to people that know David Kramer or some other folks at Sentry, how it is there, how it's working there. And that took like roughly 3 months. Because at the same time we had the fundraising discussions, so I was sort of, you know, at some point I was like delaying Sentry talks, at some point I was delaying investor talks, just to try to sync everything.
Did they do a lot of diligence on you?
Yeah, we did some, yeah, but it was not like a ridiculous amount. I just call all like our Facebook managers or whatever, that sort of thing, our investors.
Yeah, fair. And what was the terms for you guys? I mean, I don't care about the financial part that much, but more like you guys then would have to become employed in the company for an X amount of years and so on. How was the rough structure of that?
Yeah, so like I said, it wasn't just an acqui-hire, so it was sort of like, hey, take whatever you built, integrate it into Sentry, in the same dashboard, same systems, whatever, and expand it. At that point, we already had expansion plans into like other platforms, like backend profiling and things like that. So just keep doing what you're doing, and it's a year in now, and we're sort of, you know, we're executing on this plan. And now some of the things are obviously have shifted, but yeah, we're a standalone team working on profiling. I guess one thing worth mentioning is we started as a remote company at that point. That was pre-COVID, but once we saw the office rental agreements in Silicon Valley, we're like, nope. And so, good thing, because it was like 5 to 10 year terms for like, I don't know, ridiculous, like 60 grand a year or something. I was like, that's an engineer, I don't know. So yeah, remained remote, we still work remote, even though Sentry technically it's not remote, a few offices.
Yeah. To bring this more or less to a close before we open it for questions. For those in the room who are not particularly aware, what does Sentry do and what do you do within Sentry at this point in time?
So we do what our original mission was, what we did as a startup, which is profiling iOS and Android apps. Now we're expanding to other platforms, so we're going to do Python, Node, all of the other platforms that Sentry generally supports. Now what Sentry does is, they have a set of products, but their main thing is, well, I should say our main thing at this point, it's still weird, is our like errors and issues. You know, so add their SDK to your system, and I think we have like 20 SDKs or something like that, and we'll show all the errors that happen in your systems will show up on our dashboard.
Nice.
And now profiling is going to be another product within the set of products, right?
What have you learned throughout this journey that you think you can share to the young developers in the rooms, to the juniors trying to make it big? You know, either it's like they want to go into a big company, they want to do it themselves, they want to just emulate your steps in the career.
Well, I think one thing is, if you're an engineer starting and you want to go into entrepreneurship, start your own company, whatever. Just coding is not going to be enough. Like, go beyond that. Like I said, expose your work to the world. Don't work in your bubble. Open source is a huge thing now. And by the way, Sentry is an open source company, so all of our code is on GitHub. And not just code, but also like the documents about features and plans and roadmap. It's all on GitHub. So you can go and check it out. Even our profiling code now is all open source. But like, go beyond your bubble. Like, get involved in the community. We have great meetups. So like, really get involved beyond just writing code.
And for my final question, what role do you think luck has in the general story of making big startups being successful in a career?
It definitely has a role, but here's what I was saying: like, you have to create your opportunities for you to even like be lucky in the right way. This is kind of like hard to elaborate further, but like, don't just hope stuff happens. Work towards it. Open yourself up to opportunities. Increase the chance of luck happening in the direction you want it to happen. I guess it's kind of hard to explain it.
Selection practicabra. I mean, we can kind of finish off our official formal part here. I would love to open it up to the crowd now, because probably you have much more prescient questions for our guest here. We're going to do some closing remarks. I know that you want to say something at the end. If there's drinks available. I'm going to stand up and pass the mic around. Feel free to answer the questions. Who's first? Raise your hand. I'll be happy to bring the mic over to you.
Would you go back to California?
Nope.
Short and sweet. Who's next?
Hey, thank you for this. So I'm curious, what's next for you? Are you happy with how far you've come? And like, what's the next thing? Are you like just gonna retire in a couple of years, or doing the next thing?
I mean, I'm sort of locked into Sentry for a few years, vesting and all. But after that, for sure, I'm gonna start something else. Like my brain likes to be busy. After the acquisition, like a few months ago, maybe like during the summer, it was sort of like a very quiet period for me. I offloaded a lot of my work, while still sort of being in the same role, except all the finance and stuff, obviously, like, had nothing to do with it. It was sort of quiet, but I got bored real quick. I learned how to code in Rust, because I was like, I'm kind of bored, I'm just gonna write code. So I'm sure that like, even if I say like, I want to have a break, I want to do a year off, like 3 months in, I could be going crazy, so.
Nice. Don't be shy.
One thing that I'm super impressed about Spectre's story is that you basically re-implemented what you built at Facebook first. So if I remember correctly, you started Spectre just with the knowledge in your head, without any code. And there is this well-known second system syndrome, or trap, where you try to do everything much better and at the end you don't do anything. So how did you manage that re-implementation part of the basically system that you built first at Facebook, but now you kind of re-implemented it at Spectre?
Well, with the exact opposite thinking, which was like, we can definitely not rebuild what Facebook has, so let's just pick one tiny thing in this whole profiling system and we just build that. And even that took us like 2 years. So I'm glad we picked a very small scope. We sort of realized what scope creep means, because even at Facebook this kept happening all the time to all the teams. So we're sort of like, we have to try to minimize the chance of this happening to us. So we just picked a very narrow scope, and that was probably like the whole reason why, like, after like 18 months, 24 months, we had a product that sort of did something in some complete way.
Did you use some specific management techniques, approaches, how to, because scope creep is one of the things that kill startups, and obviously you manage not to fall for it.
I'll be honest, I don't read management books, like nothing. Sometimes I'll read like a summary of a book if somebody insists I should read the book, but I don't. The only one I read is Radical Candor by Kim Scott, and even that was because she sort of impressed me because I listened to her live. So I cannot give you an answer, always this technique, like this person. No, it was literally just experience. It was like, hey, I saw how this screws teams over at Facebook. You know, teams get killed, sort of like startups. Teams die within Facebook all the time, every 3 months. And that sort of resonated with me. I saw, like, I had an experience of scope creep at Facebook as well. I mean, for example, Marketplace, like Facebook Marketplace, that launched like 18 months too late. I was very close to that project. So I was just like, let's just try to avoid all this. So every time anything came up, somebody came up with an idea, we quickly evaluated it and shut it down immediately if it wasn't like the most important thing we need to focus on. It was not just like, backlog. No. Just erase, delete, forget.
Thanks.
The gentleman asked you before if you want to go back to California. I said, hell no. Why is that?
I think like 7 years was enough of that lifestyle, to say it nicely. I don't know. I have my opinions, not politically correct opinions about Californians, and that sort of lifestyle. I like our chill lifestyle. Like career, don't get me wrong. Like one thing I do not want to do is discourage anyone from going. Like if you have a career opportunity to go to California and do something there, like absolutely just drop everything and go. Because I would have not been able to do what I did out of Slovenia. These days the chances are better than they were when I did this, but like still, like it's an amazing place. It's been changing and all, but if you have the opportunity, and it's not just California, like if you have an opportunity to go do career stuff somewhere else, just go. Like, don't think about it too much. But yeah, outside of 7 years, Facebook startup was remote, COVID hit, that was a big factor, honestly. 3 months into COVID, everybody sort of disappeared from the Bay Area. All the people I kind of knew, all the Americans went to the random American states in the middle of nowhere. So I was sort of stuck there with a couple other people. Everything was shut, closed, nothing to do, company was remote. I was stuck in my apartment, sometimes I wouldn't leave the apartment for a week. I was like, I'm not doing this, not great, I'm leaving. I can run the company remotely. By that point, we were like a year in, and I was like, it's totally doable. Like, I'll go.
Ooh, yeah.
Hello, you see me. Thank you for a great talk so far. My question is tied to current turmoil in the economy and a lot of big tech companies laying people off. So I'd like to hear your take on what's next, who perhaps will be the winners of this issues that are currently appearing. Where are these people who are being laid off going? Who's going to take them? Are there going to be more startups, or just somebody who will basically get their hands on them and win the race? Thank you.
I don't like to make predictions, but and this is kind of a cliche because a lot of the investors on Twitter keep saying this, but it is a great time to build a company. There's a lot of money around, like that has to be deployed in one way or another. We do not have a liquidity issue when it comes to funds or just banks. There's no clear liquidity issue right now, unless you're FTX. But so with some more scrutiny than like 2 years ago or like a year ago even, you can still raise a great round for a startup. It's not as easy as it was because money is not free anymore, but there's a lot of it, and if you have a good idea and can coherently put together a plan, there's a high chance that 2-3 years from now you'll emerge as a successful company. In terms of like other like big companies and things, like I said, money was sort of free, so everybody grew just for the sake of growing and not for any particular reason. I mean, Facebook, like 11,000 people, really? Like, how do you grow by 11,000 people too much? For the sake of growth. I don't know, like, I don't have specific like ideas on which big company is going to do better than the other, or whatever, but as far as startups go, I think that the startups that are going to do well are the ones that are building like a solid foundation, like an actual business that has potential to be profitable. It's not built on hype. It's not built on advertising campaigns. It's not built on some celebrity tweeting something. But for example, I'll give Century as an example, because honestly, like, one of the reasons why we decided to sell to Century was because it's a freaking great company. It's an old company. The Century project started in 2008, and it became a company in 2012. And it's just only a unicorn. And you know how many companies like became like $10 billion companies and died in this period? And so if you're building a tool that's valuable to a bunch of people, and they're willing to pay for it, and it's not tied so much to like, hype, economic cycles, things like that, you'll be successful. Like the need to monitor your services, back-end services, whatever, it's not going away, even in a crisis. Sure, some companies will contract a bit, they'll try to cut costs, they'll consolidate, they're not going to have like 5 different monitoring solutions, they'll have one, but if you're the best one, or at least in their eyes you're the best one, you win.
So coming up from a question you answered before, do you still think that, in the past it was true that it was way easier to succeed in the US versus, let's say, Slovenia or even Europe? Do you still think that's the case, or do you think that maybe the difference is not that big anymore?
It's definitely not that big of a difference anymore. Like it has changed drastically and extremely fast as well. Like even just COVID itself had such an impact. We sold the company completely remotely. I didn't meet those people in person until like 6 months into like working for them. That I think says a lot. So you can definitely do a lot more from Slovenia, from Europe, than you could even just 4 years ago. So the gap is definitely narrowing. And also you have to think like San Francisco, the Bay Area is sort of in this weird state now where a lot of people actually moved away. It's still sort of buzzy in a sense. It's all nice to go there, start up stuff, and it's picking up again. But yeah, it's not such a drastic difference. So the chances have become so much better here. And in the meantime, since I sort of joined Facebook and everything, they even started opening offices all around Europe. So you can work for Google in Europe, you can work for Facebook in Europe, you can work for pretty much anything company you can think of in Europe. And there's some amazing European tech companies as well now that you can work for, and they're going to be an equal, if not better, line on your CV than Facebook was at that point.
Yeah, thank you for your Q&As. Keep it coming. I see a question here, a question there. Let's go there first.
Hi, I'm Ursula, a startup co-founder. I have a question about open source. I think it's super interesting, and if I understood it correctly, Sentry open sourced all of their code, although it's a product that they're selling. If you can tell anything a little bit more about that, because in my case, I keep on getting like somebody's going to copy you, like this fear of copying. Well, yeah, it's for me hard to convince people that that's not my biggest worry. So anything around that would be super interesting.
I think there's actually a few things to unpack here. Sentry started as an open source side project in 2008. So it just started as one. And it never made the switch or anything. It just continued being a side project from 2008 to 2012. But at some point, people were like, well, it's a great project, and we're using it, but we don't care about running all these servers to support this thing. Can we just pay you money for you to do this stuff? And they're like, oh, well, we can make money. So the company was founded in 2012 and started running the service that way. The reason why it was like that, it was because that was literally the best possible solution to this problem that a lot of people had. But that's just one example. I think the other thing is, yeah, somebody's going to steal my idea or whatever. I think this is the biggest, well, it's not the biggest, I don't know, I'm just guessing. It's one of the big reasons why a lot of startups fail, because they get too worried about somebody's going to steal my idea. I'm not telling anyone, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. Well, if you tell somebody your idea, they steal it, and they succeed and you don't, you'd be screwed anyway. That just means they executed better than you. And I'll say this, an idea is like 5% of it, and 95% is execution. So, yeah, it's just maybe the timeline will be different, right? But maybe 5 years in, you'd be screwed because you couldn't have executed those 5 years. So I say, there's probably exceptions to this, I'm sure. Like if you're doing some very specialized thing and have patents for some biomedical, I'm sure there's reasons why it wouldn't. But as a software engineer mostly doing infrastructure, there's no reason why the thing should be closed source. Also, it really increases trust with your potential customers. Does that sort of answer it?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Who's next?
So another question, you mentioned that a lot of engineers went remote after COVID. So what are your thoughts on innovation in regards? So you met your co-founder at Facebook, right? So and it was something that you thought about, you were working on, and you shared the idea with your co-founder later on. And what do you feel like remote work is going to do to the whole idea generation, idea innovation process? Is it going to stay the same, or is it going to shift? Is it going to be less ideas? What are your thoughts on that?
I actually don't think that's going to affect it, especially not in the long term. Maybe if you could run statistics on this, maybe there'd be a little blip, whatever. But it's not going to affect it. There's a lot of examples of good companies where the founders went online, even from before COVID. And so, I don't think this will have a drastic effect. Now, is it valuable to meet people in person and then connect on that level or whatever? Absolutely. But it's not necessary. It's actually, here's how I put it. It's not necessary for idea generation, but it's good to build, people relationships, the personal relationships and friendships and things like that. It might be easier, but there's plenty of ways to come up with ideas.
I think we have time for one or two more. Go ahead.
So one of the things I really respect about you is you've got an instinct about the market, but also about the technology. So I'm curious, what technologies have you seen, or what developments have you seen that you find genuinely exciting, if any?
Oh, there's definitely some. AI scares me, so we try to talk too much about that, but in some ways it's really exciting what we're seeing with AI and text processing, text generation. I mean, GitHub Copilot, anyone? That thing is amazing. You're just like writing a unit test and you need an array of like 100 random numbers and you just type a comment saying array of random numbers and it just appears. Like, that's insane. So that's really exciting for users like that. For some other users it scares me, but that's a great one. I don't know. I mean, AI is a very wide net from a lot of things, from like self-driving to code automation to a whole bunch of things. Yeah, I think that's the main one. That's the big one.
One or two more? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. When you've quit your job at Facebook and you've gone and built something, that's basically what you've done here, have you ever had any concerns about kind of conflict of interest, like Facebook like maybe suing you, saying like this kind of our property, that kind of stuff? Because I keep coming up with ideas I see where I work, and I kind of worry, oh, I don't want to like, why did they figure it out? Is it, oh, this kind of company property, that kind of stuff.
There's a fine line between intellectual property or just ideas that are not intellectual property. But California is very lax with these laws. So for example, one thing that, so this happens all the time in California, like obviously if you're, what's the guy's name? Lewandowski something, the guy that left Waymo and went to Uber, like obviously that's dodgy, don't do that. But like, we didn't take any code, we didn't take like no intellectual property in a sense, it was just stuff in our head. Here's another key thing. We didn't directly compete with Facebook in any way. Facebook doesn't sell this product, doesn't care about selling this product, doesn't care about monetizing this product. So okay, sure, go. Maybe we'll even acquire you back like after 3 years. Like that's the sort of attitude. And this happens all the time in the Valley. I realize here it might be different, but again, I come back to the fact that, you know, a lot of people cling to their ideas. And there's a lot of companies in Slovenia that do that as well. That might be an issue, right? But if you're going to directly compete with our company, that's an issue everywhere. It doesn't matter. Like if you just take, oh hey, I built this script here that automates a bunch of shit, and that company doesn't care why it doesn't monetize the script, it's not in its business. Then I don't think it's an issue.
Makes sense.
Don't copy paste the code, but.
And now we will give the honor of the final question to somebody who wishes to raise their hand now. Lovely, then I can do final remarks. Oh, sorry, apologies, Monsieur there.
Few questions ago, you said kill it, delete it, shut it off, the idea, right? How do you pick the good ones? How do you choose the one you want to implement, and how do you decide which one to kill immediately?
Well, the beginning is very subjective, because like you cannot just go and ask like 50 customers, hey, what do you think about this, right? So it's like, does the team think this is good? Do I have a sense that it's good? But it's mostly about the team, right? Like we hire great people, so like, you know, besides being great coders, they have some sense of what we're building. Also evaluate how complex it is. It might be a great idea, but it takes like 3 years for 3 engineers to build. Shut it down, like everything's very easy. So it's actually like it's like a communal process in some way, right? It's not just me making a call. But there's a bunch of factors, like complexity, how long it's going to take you to do all these things, and you don't have unlimited time, so that's a big factor. And if something is really that great of an idea, even if you don't leave it in a backlog written somewhere for like 3 years down the line, it's going to come back. So if it comes back a couple of times, then you know there's probably something to it. So you start looking at it differently. So I'd say, yeah, until you have customers or a critical mass of customers, that's the way you do it. Once you have customers, you do that as well. Like you still do it that way. But you can go and ask your customers, like, hey, would you pay for this? Then it becomes sort of simple. I mean, nothing simple, but like, you know.
Nice. Thank you so very much. I mean, the show's not over. There's going to be drinks served just behind the carousel. To conclude our conversation here, from the side of, the hosts, Silicon Gardens Venture Fund, we are always looking to see startups willing to talk to us. We will be happy to get pitches in, and we will promise feedback immediately, investment if you're interested. obviously jumping on the other side of the table here. I'm sure our friend here is not hard to reach. I can tell by this conversation that you're willing to help, willing to offer advice. Thank you so very much for all the thoughts that you have already shared. You said you have some particular closing remarks that you want to do, so I'll let you do that, and then I'll say thank you, and we'll give a round of applause.
Well, like I said earlier, Sentry is a great business. We have a lot of cash in the bank. We can probably make it till the next recession, not this one, the next one. We're hiring. We're particularly looking for senior site reliability engineers. I wanted to mention this. It's something we need to get better at. We're not great at it. We're hiring. Remote is fine. Remote out of Slovenia is fine. We've done all the legal stuff so that you can actually be full-time employed in Slovenia for Sentry. So yeah, if somebody, there's a couple other positions on the website as well, sentry.io/careers. So, look at things. Well, actually, funny enough, we're also looking for a product manager for profiling. Product management's not for me. I'm an engineer. But yeah, site reliability engineers, senior ones. Like, if you're interested, please reach out. We really need to improve some of our metrics there on uptime is not amazing.
And I hope something good comes out of this request for help. As always, Silicon Gardens is happy to host this event and all the future events. And if one connection happens, be it a mentorship relationship, be it something else completely, then we have done our job. There's going to be a few more events like this. Well, this one was certainly the best so far. I don't know if we'll be able to repeat it at such a high level. But in any case, the bar is now officially open, and this gentleman over here deserves a warm round of applause. Thank you very much.